It's 2002, and Disney animation is at its peak. But the newest release isn't about a princess or talking mouse, but an intergalactic fugitive who really likes Elvis. That's right, we're going over the entire story of Lilo and Stitch. From this, all the way to this. Stitch was first introduced to audiences through a series of teasers, where Stitch crashes into different iconic Disney movies.
Hey, that's not Simba!
The story, which spans 4 movies and an entire Disney Channel series, is full of sci-fi action with incredible creature design and a big beating heart. It has been nominated for an Oscar, multiple Emmys, and spawned video games, with Stitch even appearing as a summon in Kingdom Hearts. So, let's get into the story. Lilo and Stitch is the feature film that started it all. We begin as far from Hawaii as possible, in space. On a United Galactic Federation ship, specifically that's right. There's an entire council of aliens up there, and surprise surprise, Earth isn't invited. We meet 4 of the main players immediately, the first being a mysterious tall alien figure who most closely resembles a classic gray alien, the Grand Councilwoman. She's in charge of the Federation and is the main authority figure throughout the series. Jumba says his experiments are theoretical, but it's a complete lie. The council presents Stitch, who at this time is only known as Experiment 626. Jumba goes over Stitch's stats: bulletproof, fireproof, brain of a supercomputer, engineering expert, and program for maximum destruction. He's also kind of cute, but don't tell Jumba that. And as a side note, if you want to see the events of his capture, check out the game Stitch Experiment 626. Anyways, the Grand Councilwoman gives Stitch a chance to show he's good, and he insults the entire council. Stitch is taken away. Stitch is held captive by Captain Gonzu, who is sometimes referred to as Big Dummy and ends up being one of the main antagonists throughout the entire series. Despite his size and scary whale-like design, he's kind of a bumbling idiot, but for now, with guns pointed at Stitch, he's pretty intense. Gonzu tells Stitch he will be banished to a desert asteroid. Once Gonzu leaves, Stitch exploits turrets trained to only shoot his genetic makeup to his advantage, by spitting on a guard. This is the first time we see just how dangerous Stitch can be. Yeah, remind me to never mess with him. Stitch hijacks a police cruiser and escapes into hyperspace. The Grand Councilwoman tracks him to Earth, which most aliens have no idea about. She gets the lowdown that the planet is mostly covered in water, and Stitch will sink due to his high density, but he lands on a small island in the Pacific, Kauai, part of Hawaii. The Grand Councilwoman wants to gas the whole planet, but she's interrupted by Pleakley, who says Earth is a protected wildlife preserve for mosquitoes. Pleakley and the Grand Councilwoman go see Jumba in his cell and give him a choice: his freedom for the capture of his rogue experiment. She also sends Pleakley to join him. This is one of the core duos of the series, as Jumba's Papa Bear mixed with mad scientist energy hilariously clashes with Pleakley's neurosis. But for now, they're just getting to know each other. Millions of miles away, Lilo goes for a swim. Lilo is one of Disney's most memorable characters. She is good-natured, but super energetic, sometimes verging on feral, making her a perfect match for Stitch. She is thoughtful deep down, but her feisty attitude can be a bit much for others. Lilo runs to hula class and gets there just in time. One problem: she soaks the dance floor, and the other girls fall. Her teacher, Kumu, asks why Leo was wet, and she says she was bringing a sandwich to a fish. That's a normal thing people do, right? No? See, Lilo is a little different, and Myrtle, Lilo's spoiled classmate, calls her crazy. So Lilo decides to bite her, but she feels super bad right after. Lilo's sister Nani comes to pick Lilo up, and panics when she can't find her. Nani is central to the entire series. She's Lilo's sole guardian following the death of their parents. She is a little harsh out of necessity, but cares deeply for her sister and always tries her best. Nani gets home to find Lilo locked her out of the house. Nani peers in a window to see Lilo sitting in depression, listening to her favorite artist Elvis. That's right, this 6-year-old loves the king. Nani yells and tries to break in through the dog door when someone appears behind her. Turns out, a social worker named Cobra Bubbles has been assigned to determine if Nani is an adequate caretaker for Lilo. She gets inside and invites him in. Bubbles is not impressed by the state of their home. It's a complete mess. Lilo can tell something is off about Bubbles right away, but can't tell what. He asks Lilo if she's happy, and she has a clearly scripted answer until she slips in a lie that Nani disciplines her with bricks in a pillowcase. Yikes, that is not chill. Bubbles tells Nani that she has 3 days to prove she is capable of parenting Lilo. Nani chases Lilo all over the house and finds her hiding. Where she's hiding depends on the version you're watching. See, the film's first release has Lilo hiding in a dryer, which is the version we're showing you here. But subsequent edits swap this out to a cupboard with a pizza box blocking Lilo's face. Lilo has a massive tantrum until Nani screams at Lilo to go to her room. Once everyone calms down, Nani comes to Lilo's room and they talk. It's a really lovely scene that tugs at the heartstrings in a way that only Disney at its best can do. Then something wild happens. Huh?
I call it! Get out! Get out! I have to make a wish!
Probably nothing. Nani leaves and sees Lilo praying for a friend, for an angel. Little does she know, she'll get Stitch. Stitch approaches life on Earth the same way he approaches everything else, shooting first and asking questions later. But the unfamiliarity of the planet quickly gets the best of him, and he gets hit by a truck. Stitch wakes up in the pound, and every dog is terrified of him. Stitch escapes easily, but hears Jumba and sneaks back into the kennel. Lilo goes to pick out a dog, but doesn't see any as they're all hiding from Stitch. Stitch absorbs some of his more alien features and poses as a dog. He's got a few tricks to learn. Nani and the kennel owner are totally freaked out, but Lilo insists this is the perfect pet for her. Lilo finally has a best friend. From a distance, Jumba watches. He trains a sniper dot on Stitch when Lilo steps in front, and Pleakley stops him from shooting, not for her safety, but because she's part of the mosquito food chain. Jumba charges, but Pleakley forces him out of sight. He suggests they find a way to blend in. Meanwhile, Nani lets Lilo and Stitch go explore the town. Lilo sees Myrtle riding a tricycle and apologizes, but Myrtle doesn't accept it. Stitch sees Pleakley and Jumba in human disguise and throws Myrtle off her trek to get away. Lilo jumps on the back. Stitch rides across the land seeking a city to take over when he realizes he's completely surrounded by water. Island bro. Ever heard of it? Lilo instantly loves Stitch, and Stitch loves not being a prisoner, so he takes to being Lilo's dog. That night at a resort restaurant, Lilo shows Stitch a drawing of his outline with bad filled in. It's over halfway. Just then, Nani, who works at the restaurant as a waitress, comes by. She's annoyed Lilo has her dog at the table. Next, the fire dancer they were watching, David, comes over. He tries to ask Nani out, but she says no because of her responsibilities to Lilo. Suddenly, Stitch follows an alien-looking chicken drumstick dragged by his table. It's a trap. Jumba scoops him up and Stitch bites Pleakley. Nani rushes over, thinking a customer is in trouble, and gets fired right after. That is not good. That night at home, Stitch makes a mess and Nani suggests getting rid of him, but Lilo insists this is the angel that she prayed for. Nani is almost out the door with Stitch when Lilo reminds her of their father's old saying.
Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left
behind.
It's one of the most poignant and important quotes in the series. Nani relents and Stitch heads to Lilo's room to get some rest. Bedtime doesn't stop Stitch from causing chaos when Lilo tells him to channel his destructive energy into creation instead. He makes a model of San Francisco and destroys it as a kaiju. I would love to see him go against Godzilla. Late at night, Stitch discovers a picture book of the ugly duckling. Lilo wakes up and reads him the story. It clearly resonates with this lonely alien. The next morning, Bubbles shows up and confronts Nani about losing her job. He says the next time he sees Nani, she needs to have a job, and Stitch has to become a model citizen. Nani sets out to apply around town, while Lilo tries to get Stitch into shape by emulating Elvis. As Nani applies for a job as a lifeguard, Stitch does an Elvis dance on the beach. He draws a crowd, but their flash photos overwhelm him and he attacks. It's pandemonium with the crowd fleeing and Stitch, Lilo, and Nani left in the debris. Stitch actually looks like he feels bad for once. David notices the sisters wallowing and invites them to go surfing. This sequence is set to a Hawaiian roller coaster ride, one of the most iconic songs in the series. But disaster strikes when Jumba lunges out from a wave and grabs Stitch. He resurfaces, fighting off Jumba, but accidentally drags Lilo down. Nani kicks Stitch away to save Lilo, unaware of Jumba and Pleakley. Stitch fends off Jumba and Pleakley, but sinks right after. David saves him just in time. On the shore, Nani checks in with Lilo. David brings up the drowned Stitch when Bubble shows up. Nani tries to explain, but he's had it. He says he will be back tomorrow morning to take over caring for Lilo. That is so heavy. Stitch eavesdrops on Nani, telling Lilo she is losing custody. Nani sings Aloha Oi, and it's super emotional. Back in Lilo's room, she shows Stitch a photo of her parents and says they died in a car accident. Lilo asks about Stitch's parents, and she knows he's traumatized. Lilo wants Stitch to join her Ohana, but says if he wants to go, he can. Stitch leaves with the ugly duckling book. Meanwhile, the Grand Councilwoman loses all patience with Jumba and Pleakley and sends Gansu to Earth to take care of things right away. The next morning, Stitch wakes up alone. Jumba finds him. He tells Jumba he's waiting for his family, but Jumba says he has none. Stitch was made to destroy. He runs away. At Lilo's house, both sisters are completely devastated. Nani is comforting Lilo when David knocks, with big news. He got Nani a job interview. She tells Lilo to stay put and rushes off to try to get hired. As soon as Lilo's alone, Stitch comes back and Jumba reveals himself. Stitch quickly builds traps out of household items and fights back. Lilo calls Bubbles to report the aliens, and as if it couldn't get any more chaotic, Stitch throws a car at Jumba. In the end, the entire house blows up. Nani sees an emergency truck drive by and rushes home. She arrives when Bubbles loads Lilo into his car. As Nani and Bubbles argue, Lilo escapes. In the jungle, Stitch gives Lilo a recovered photo of her parents, but it doesn't matter. She's done with him. Stitch reveals he's an alien too. How didn't she know? Before they can totally reconcile, Gantu bags them both up. Nani witnesses him take Lilo and Stitch in his spaceship. As it takes off, Stitch escapes. Nani demands Stitch help when Jumba appears and takes Stitch. Nani asks Jumba where Lilo is and demands that he and Pleakley bring her back, but they can't. Nani breaks down, but words of comfort come from an unexpected place.
Family means nobody gets left behind.
Stitch asks Jumba for help, and surprisingly, the mad scientist agrees. It's the start of a relationship with Jumba and Pleakley as allies that will continue for the rest of the series. Meanwhile, Lilo is all alone when another ship appears, the police cruiser from the beginning of the movie. Jumba pilots it with Stitch and Nani in tow. Stitch jumps the Gantu's ship but gets thrown off. Stitch survives the fall and hijacks a gas truck. He drives it into hot lava from Hawaii's volcano. It blows up and he uses the explosion to launch himself up to Gantu's ship. He frees Lilo as the ship explodes, but Stitch manages to jump to the other just in time. The ship lands in the ocean, and David brings them back on his surfboard. The Grand Councilwoman waits on shore and apprehends Stitch immediately. She's really mad at all the aliens. Then, she comes to a striking realization. Stitch showed he can care. It doesn't matter though, the Federation laws are ironclad. But Lilo challenges it with proof of Stitch's purchase from the dog shelter. Bubbles, who reveals himself as CIA and recognizes the councilwoman from another incident in Roswell, New Mexico, makes Lilo's case. The councilwoman decides Stitch would still be exiled, but on Earth instead, with Lilo's family under the protection of the Federation. She leaves Jumba and Pleakley in Hawaii too. Lilo's friends and family pitch in to rebuild their house with Lilo back where she's supposed to be, under Nani's care. It's a beautiful, heartwarming ending set to a rockin' Elvis cover. The story seems completely wrapped up, but little does Lilo know that more sci-fi alien insanity is just around the bend. A year later came Stitch the movie, which served as a sort of backdoor plot for Lilo and Stitch the series. Like the original film, we open in space. Gantu, now stripped of his captain status, receives his next assignment from his new boss, the evil Dr. Jacques von Hamsterviel, who was Jumba's ex-partner and ends up becoming the main antagonist for the rest of the series. He sends Gantu back to Earth to find additional experiments. Jumba and Pleakley are getting used to their new Hawaiian lifestyle. They aren't blending in very well. Lilo gets Stitch ready to interact with strangers, but from beach volleyball to a luau, he causes chaos everywhere he goes.
Okay, who wants to slice the pineapple?
Stitch gets sent away and sulks off. Lilo comforts Stitch with a bowl of ice cream. She tells him to not be discouraged because he's one of a kind, like Frankenstein. I think she means Frankenstein's monster, but we'll let this one slide. Stitch goes to Jumba for support, and he reinforces Lilo's idea. The aliens are one of a kind and might not fit in with Earthlings. Just then, Gantu appears at the door. They start to make an exit when Gantu announces he's not there for Stitch. Jumba gives Pleakley a mysterious package. He makes Pleakley hide as Gantu interrogates Jumba on the location for additional experiments. Gantu takes a dehydration ball containing an experiment and flies away with Jumba. Stitch hotwires Jumba's ship and chases after Gantu. After a date, Nani comes back with David to find the house empty. Stitch pursues Gantu and fires on his ship in an epic space battle. Stitch gets some shots in, but Gantu gets the upper hand, immobilizing Stitch's ship and escaping with Jumba. Stitch's ship crashes back down to Earth. Lilo returns home and Stitch frees Pleakley. He shows Lilo and Stitch the hidden device Jumba left with him. They open it up. That's right, Stitch's name isn't just a number. He's a part of a whole lineage of chaos-causing aliens, each with a unique number. Lilo suggests activating another experiment to recruit for the mission to get Jumba back. But Pleakley says it's a bad idea because of the potential mayhem multiple Stitches would inevitably cause. Nani comes home and is relieved that Lilo is fine. Nani wants Leo to move on from Jumba, but she insists he's part of their Ohana. Who can resist those faces? Pleakley decides to start calling all the numbers in a phone book. Remember those? In hopes of reaching Jumba. Good luck. Nani calls Agent Cobra Bubbles, but he's asleep. Lilo and Stitch go back to Jumba's computer, which Stitch quickly unlocks. Cycle through all the experiments before selecting Experiment 221. An electric-powered Stitch. He bolts away into the Hawaiian jungle. Lilo and Stitch decide to search for 221. Back on Gantu's ship, Hamsterviel tries to get Jumba to talk, to no avail. Hamsterviel activates the experiment orb in hopes of beating the information out of Jumba. He drops the orb in a water beaker and Experiment 625 comes to life. Gantu and Hamsterviel return to the interrogation room to find 625, Gantu's assistant throughout the series, who is good at making sandwiches and that's it. No, seriously, Stitch's closest relative is totally incompetent, except for when it comes to chowing down. Turns out they picked one of the laziest experiments possible. Jumba sure got off lucky. On the search for 221, Lilo finds her friends from school on a campout, and she didn't get the invite. Ouch. Worse, none of them believe her that an alien is on the loose. Stitch gives them a scare and they run away, missing the fact that 221 was hiding in a bug zapper. They return home and run to bed as Nani chases them for staying out too late. She is so getting grounded. Pleakley's blind dialing actually gets through. What are the odds? Hamsterviel tries to use 625 to make Jumba talk, but all he can do is talk about sandwiches. Man, he really loves cold cuts. Hamsterviel takes the phone away from Jumba and demands a ransom, the remaining experiments in exchange for Jumba. The next day, Bubbles arrives and tells the team to wait for Hamsterviel's next call and to make the trade.
Cobra! Thank goodness. It's terrible. Just terrible.
He tells Lilo and her family they don't need to do anything else. Lilo takes Stitch outside and reminds Stitch that they need to find 221 so the exchange includes all the experiments. Stitch, totally not intervening, hijacks Bubbles' car. Cool shades. They search far and wide, even encountering Ice Cream Man, until they find a retirement home in chaos. 221 zaps around the building, and Lilo and Stitch try to catch him. After a brief battle, they trap 221 in a vase. He is really angry. Back at the ship, Stitch and 221 get acquainted. They bond, and Stitch decides he can't let 221 go because 221 is Ohana. Lilo agrees. Just then, Hamsterviel calls, and Bubbles sets out to meet him at the lighthouse. Since Stitch sabotaged Bubbles' vehicle, they take Nani's X-Buggy instead. Nani tells them to stay put, but that's not gonna happen. Pleakley and Bubbles arrive at the lighthouse, and it's quiet. Too quiet. Bet he was a little smaller than Pleakley expected. They make the exchange, but the computer announces one experiment is missing. There's almost a showdown. But Lilo arrives with a final experiment. She announces that she will not give up 221, who is now named Sparky. Lilo has to choose between Jumba and Sparky, but says Hamsterviel can't have either. She lets Sparky go. Jumba starts shooting at Stitch, but he dodges the blast and carries Jumba away. Bubbles radios the Grand Councilwoman, who quickly flies in. She's ready to shoot Hamsterviel, who's carrying the dehydration pods, when Sparky flies in and zaps the ship, disabling it. With Jumba safe, Lilo and Stitch sneak onto Hamsterviel's ship as it takes off. Sparky follows too. Lilo and Stitch, come on, mostly Stitch, throw the pods out into space. Gantu thinks he has a grip on them when the device breaks open and the dehydrated experiment pods rain down over Hawaii. Lilo and Stitch are imprisoned on Hamsterviel's ship. He summons them and does a villainous monologue where he says he's going to clone Stitch to create an army. Lilo and Stitch are about to be punished when
Oh, thanks, cousin.
they strap down Hamsterviel, who lamely says it was all a joke. Nice try. Stitch goes to save Lilo. He thinks it's too late, but turns out the outgoing pod was just 625 ordering a sandwich. Number 4, with a side of saving lives. Stitch frees Lilo and they escape. Sparky gives Gantu a goodbye present and causes him to crash land back on Hawaii. Stitch arrives with Hamsterviel arrested. The High Councilwoman carts Hamsterviel away, but this is far from the last we'll see of that radical rodent. Stitch and Lilo take Sparky to the old lighthouse, and he lights it up for the first time in ages. The entire island is moved. One big problem. The island is covered in loose experiments, and the Grand Councilwoman wants them rounded up and destroyed. Lilo explains that they're Stitch's cousins, Ohana, so the Grand Councilwoman allows them to find the experiments, all 623 pods, and take them in. Hey, that sounds like a great premise for a series. Which leads us to Lilo and Stitch the series. Premiering only a month after Stitch the movie, the show directly continues the story with episode 1 Richter. 513 hatches when a dehydration pod falls into a cooler. He immediately causes an earthquake. Gantu repairs his ship while receiving orders from Hamsterviel in prison. Doesn't sound like they have the best security there. Back on the island, Pleakley preps the group for earthquakes. Guess can't be too careful. Meanwhile, Nani is made to work on her day off. Stitch tries to help and, well, predictably makes more of a mess. Stitch and Lilo head out and see Gantu asking around for the experiment. Lilo asks Jumba for help. He says 513 is made to cause little tremors, but will eventually create a giant quake if he gets underground. Gantu gives them a substance to stop 513, and Pleakley forces them to take earthquake go bags. They go after 513, and things get a little shaky. 513 flees underground, and Stitch stops Gantu by spraying him with the sticky substance. Lilo and Stitch go underground, but 513 will not stop shaking things up, and the entrance caves in. He buries himself deep underground. Jumba upgrades the X-Buggy with a giant drill.
Cool! I feel like a giant dentist.
And Lilo and Stitch head out again to capture 513 once and for all. 513 takes Stitch's orange ball and causes mayhem until Lilo and Stitch put a stop to it. Then, Gantu nabs 513. Lilo and Stitch are left to fend for themselves in the collapsing cave, and they surface near Jumba and Pleakley. Bad news. 513's tremors are going to break the island in two. They plan to make another quake on the opposite side of the island to block them. Lilo and Stitch break into Gantu's ship to free 513. Stitch meets 625 briefly, but Stitch's cousin is more concerned with lunch. With Gantu trapped in glass, they go to stop the quake. Stitch talks to 513 and says if he helps them, Stitch will give him his orange ball. Jumba thankfully translates this exchange, which helps, but I don't speak Stitch. 513, now called Richter, after the earthquake measuring scale, saves the day. Stitch digs him out, and Richter gets a job at Nani's shack, causing shakes. Milkshakes, that is. Episode 5, Spooky, is a Halloween special that finds Hawaii looking darker than ever. Experiment 300 hatches, and he's definitely the creepiest so far. He shapeshifts into a cougar, then a dog catcher, and snakes off. Meanwhile, Lilo attends a Halloween party, and her dead hula girl costume freaks everyone out.
I'm a dead hula girl.
Her teacher Kumu tells Lilo she should try dressing like a princess, a Disney princess maybe, like the other girls. The rest of Lilo's alien friends at home get their costumes together, except Stitch, who is researching the concept of Halloween itself. Lilo tells Stitch her method for avoiding fear in a nice musical moment. Lilo puts on a princess costume, but makes sure to add an axe sticking out of her head. There's only one Lilo. She returns to the party, in her scariest costume yet. Wait, that's not Lilo. The real Lilo shows up after the chaos and finds her classmates freaked out. Later on, when Stitch gets a midnight snack, 300 turns into Stitch's worst fear, water. Lilo realizes 2 recent scary episodes might be related and goes to Jumba for help. Stitch is a total scaredy cat on the way. Lilo looks in Jumba's database and finds that experiment 300 is designed to change into someone's worst fear. They set out to find him. On Halloween night, Lilo and Stitch start their search. They split up and Stitch is a little jumpy. He starts shooting at trick-or-treaters.
Stitch! Ah!
Back home, Nani receives a visit from Cobra, who says he's there to take Lilo away. What? Lilo follows the screams to Stitch and comes home. She immediately knows 300 is Bubbles and attacks. He escapes, and Lilo, Stitch, Jumba, and Pleakley head out to find 300. The trail leads to a totally not haunted-looking house on the hill. They head inside and Stitch gets scared. He falls into a pool. Next, 300 turns into a clown and drives Lilo up a pillar. Stitch holds himself up with a board of wood and sings Lilo's song from earlier, but he sinks at the last second. He faces his fear by singing and walks out of the pool to catch Lilo just in time. Lilo and Stitch find 300 terrifying Pleakley and Jumba in another room. Stitch goes after him and discovers 300's one weakness, resisting fear. Back at home, a mob of trick-or-treaters line up at Lilo's, where they each get scared by 300. Although, this time, they have fun doing it. Lilo says he can find his home at the haunted house. Episode 9, Yin Yang, focuses on 502, who is fiery in more ways than one, and his water-powered twin, 501, who has a squid-like design. On Gantu's ship, he recruits 625 to help him catch the 2 new experiments. They split up, 1 hunter for each. Too bad for 625 that this isn't a search for the best sub shop. On the beach, David explains the concept of yin and yang, but Lilo and Stitch can't seem to balance each other out. They head into the jungle and find 501 and 2 causing some serious damage. Lilo tries to come up with a plan, but Stitch goes with brute force and makes things way worse. Jumba gives the lowdown on 501 and 2, which doesn't take an intergalactic rocket scientist to figure out. He explains that if the 2 experiments make contact, it will cause a giant explosion. Lilo is super annoyed at Stitch. They hunt these experiments by splitting up, to prove they can succeed without the other. Jumba and Pleakley bet on who will win. Gantu goes after 502 and finds 625 hard at work. Wow, he has to be the laziest creature in the galaxy. Meanwhile, Jumba helps Stitch prepare with crazy sci-fi gadgets, while Pleakley assists Lilo with household cleaning items. It's hard to see how this will even be a competition. Both teams pursue each experiment right next to each other, and both fail spectacularly. 501 and 502 begin interacting when Gantu sweeps in and takes both. Gantu gets trapped by picking up a sandwich laid by 625 and meant for the experiments. They escape, and Gantu is sealed up. Jumba stresses the danger they are in, but Lilo challenges him and says maybe they are yin and yang like David said at the beginning of the episode. Lilo realizes that she and Stitch have to work together too. They head off as a team and make short work of the experiments. Both Pleakley and Jumba claim victory, but since they both caught their experiments at the same time, it's a draw, meaning both Pleakley and Jumba have to do a humiliating dance.
Stick out your glocker and shake it till your glocker black and blue.
The episode wraps up as Lilo demonstrates to David the results of 501 and 2's cooperation. They build a new island. Episode 12, Amnesio, is one you won't want to forget. Wait, what was I talking about? Experiment 303 hatches in a sandcastle and has a freaky bug-like appearance. He has the power to make people forget, and proves it by immediately ruining an anniversary dinner. Back at Gantu's ship, Hamsterviel berates him again. He wants 303 to control the memories of millions. Over at Lilo's, it's her birthday. She's expecting a big surprise from Nani, but quickly discovers that her sister has completely forgotten.
Here's your toast. Sorry I'd scrape off the burnt part for you, but I'm late for work.
Pleakley and Jumba did too. Lilo recruits Stitch to plan her party without Nani. They invite the entire town. It isn't long before Gantu traps 303 and they fight over the experiment. When it zaps them all, everyone forgets their identity. Stitch goes back to his chaotic, pre-domesticated self, and it leads to an unlikely team-up of Gantu and Lilo to find Stitch, who they think is the one who removed their memory. They set off into the jungle to find Stitch. Gantu finds Lilo's birthday invite, but they keep on Stitch's trail. They wind up at a mall, and it leads to a hilarious mix-up. They actually have a nice afternoon when they find Stitch creating mayhem. Pleakley and Jumba find Lilo, and Jumba quickly realizes that 303 wiped her memory. He catches everyone up on the status quo. Lilo and Stitch are an experiment hunting team, and Gantu is their nemesis. Jumba is about to reveal the password that will allow 303 to return their memories when the experiment erases his next. Lilo decides to give working with Stitch a chance to get their memories back, and Gantu joins along too. Lilo and Stitch bust into their home and look at Jumba's computer to discover the password, but outside, Gantu finds a crude drawing of himself made by Lilo with the title Big Dummy. He gets offended and heads off into the jungle. Lilo and Stitch find Gantu deep in reflection. He doesn't want to hurt anything and lets 303 escape. Stitch and Lilo hijack a car and follow 303 to a factory. Lilo says the password Ohana and everyone's memories return. They set off to grab 303, while Gantu attempts to stop them, and it's a pretty zany sequence. Gantu ends up with the experiment. Lilo comes home to find all of her friends through her surprise party. Guess they did care after all. Meanwhile, Gantu beams 303 to Hamsterviel, who erases his memory and says Hamsterviel's real name is Doofus.
What am I?
Your name is Doofus.
Yup, very fitting. Episode 18, Yarp, starts with, you guessed it, an experiment hatching, this time number 613. He has a horn on his head that projects supersonic blasts. Meanwhile, Lilo does a presentation at her school on her area of expertise, aliens. No one takes it seriously, even with Stitch right next to her. Lilo proposes to install an alien invasion alarm, but the class only has time for one project, and they choose a boring mural instead. Kumu tells her to write a letter to the mayor. Meanwhile, 613 causes mayhem at a TV store. He escapes, but not without a cost. That's right, Stitch can't hear. Jumba diagnoses Stitch and says he needs to stay home, as Stitch is sensitive to the supersonic blasts.
Acute loss of hearing!
Ah! Oh, Titty!
Lilo brings Pleakley along, as he doesn't have traditional ears. They try to train him on experiment hunting, and it goes fine. Jumba gives Pleakley the vacuum to suck 613 into a glass container. They track him using sonic equipment to a cave, while Stitch distracts Gantu in the meantime. After some near misses and false starts, Pleakley ends up buried in rubble. 613 is terrified by the falling rocks, and Pleakley uses his training and actually saves the little guy. Just as Lilo is ready to go after Pleakley, he emerges with 613. The only issue is that Gantu captured Stitch. He offers to make a trade. Lilo agrees to meet him at the Natural History Museum. They make the exchange, but Lilo's got a trick up her sleeve. Stitch outmaneuvers Gantu until museum security overwhelms him. All's well that ends well, when Lilo gives 613, now named Yarp, a job as an invasion alarm. Does anyone outside of Lilo in Hawaii care that aliens are running around? The next episode, 627, opens mid-chase with Lilo and Stitch, Gantu, and the gang after experiment 515. Stitch sets a new record, capturing and turning the equipment into good in 5 minutes flat. At home, Pleakley makes Thanksgiving dinner, which he does once a month, and Stitch starts getting demanding. All that successful alien hunting went to his head. Juba gets fed up and invents a brand new experiment, 627. Of course, this little monster escapes right away. On Gantu's ship, 625 decides to take a break from Gantu and heads into the jungle, where he meets 627 and brings him back to the ship. Gantu eagerly recruits him. Meanwhile, Stitch is acting like a total diva, complete with trailer and all. Lilo tries to give him a reality check, but it's no use. Gantu and 627 swoop in and catch the experiment. Stitch starts battling with his new cousin and is easily defeated. At home, Lilo goes to Jumba, who plays dumb, so Pleakley tricks him into accidentally admitting to creating 627. Jumba says 627 has the powers of 20 different experiments. Stitch sets out to prove he's better. Stitch goes to capture multiple experiments, but is one-upped each time by 627. He's dejected, but Lilo assures him they will find a way. The vibe couldn't be any more different on Gantu's ship, where 627 creates a mess. Gantu, inspired by his recent success, decides to go rogue with 627. At Lilo's, she asks Jumba if he can get rid of 627. He says no, but she sees an ad for a dehydrator and decides it's worth a shot. 625 calls Lilo and says he'll assist Lilo in taking down 627. Lilo gives Stitch a pep talk, and they're off. Stitch breaks into the ship and lures Gantu and 627 out. They have a battle, but Stitch finds a secret weakness: laughter.
Stop it! Stop it!
It isn't long before 627 is in Stitch's. Get it? Lilo dehydrates him into a pod. The next night at dinner, Stitch serves them instead of waiting like a king. Not too far off, Jumba preps experiment 628, who is mysteriously never mentioned again. Episode 23, Houdini. Stitch does a magic show for an audience of other experiments and aliens. Turns out he's rehearsing for Myrtle's party tomorrow. It's a bit of a mess. She approaches Jumba, who is studying some experiment pods that the duo retrieved, and suggests activating experiment 604 to conduct her magic show. He's a little shy. She calls him Houdini. 625 gives Gantu the pod for experiment 611. Gantu gets the notification of Houdini's emergence and heads out. 625 gets mad at Gantu for taking credit. During Lilo's party, she has Houdini ready to turn objects invisible as soon as Stitch says the magic words. Myrtle figures out they're cheating and snaps a photo of Houdini, which makes him disappear objects wildly, including Stitch. He turns invisible himself and runs off. At home, Pleakley tells Lilo that Myrtle's aunt, Stacy, saw the act and wants Stitch to make the lighthouse disappear on national TV. Myrtle shows up to taunt Lilo that Stitch can't make anything disappear without Houdini. Lilo tries different methods to get Stitch visible and settles on Invisible Man-style bandages. Lilo, Stitch, and Jumba stumble on Gantu chasing after Houdini. He uses thermal goggles and swoops Houdini up, leaving Lilo's magic act sure to be underwhelming. Lilo regroups with Jumba and Pleakley when Houdini reappears. Lilo grabs him, thinking he is Stitch. Pleakley starts yelling about the contract he signed with Myrtle's aunt, which spooks Houdini and makes him disappear again. Back with Gantu, he's having a hard time taming Invisible Stitch.
This invisibility experiment is absolute mayhem.
Stitch sabotages his ship and runs to Lilo and Jumba, who set out to find him earlier. They chase after Houdini. The lighthouse show is totally underwhelming, with Pleakley doing lame sleight of hand when something magic happens. Talk about good timing. Episode 126, Finder, starts with Hamsterviel breaking out of jail and flying to Earth. This isn't gonna be good. Meanwhile, Lilo uses experiment 158 activated off-screen between episodes named Finder to, you guessed it, find Nani's lost keys. Lilo decides to take Finder into her class for show and tell. On Gantu's ship, he gets the call that Hamsterviel escaped, and he is demoted to be 625's assistant. In class, Lilo shows off Finder's abilities, and the other girls love her for a change.
Find my lip gloss. I lost my notebook. My kitty is gone.
Later, Lilo brags about Finder while Stitch hears and looks sad. Ouch. Pleakley and Jumba get a call from the Grand Councilwoman to loop them in on Hamsterviel's jailbreak. Lilo decides to put Finder up to finding the fugitive while Stitch heads out to look on his own. They follow Stitch, but he and Finder disagree on the path at a fork in the road. Lilo chooses Finder. Meanwhile, Myrtle looks for a pet to compete with Finder when the answer bumps right into her. She scoops him up and heads off. This is a match made in heaven. Finder leads the game to Myrtle's house. Lilo asks her if she saw anything weird, but Myrtle, helpful as always, denies them, making it look like Finder made a mistake. Stitch sees Hamsterviel attempting to escape, but Lilo and the gang don't hear him. Myrtle sees Hamsterviel out of his cage and locks him up tight. She starts treating him like a hamster, and he slowly gets into it. Hamsterviel makes a plasma cannon, but Myrtle doesn't seem to care. Just then, Stitch appears in her bedroom. He gets knocked out and taken away by the dog catcher. Meanwhile, the Grand Councilwoman is getting restless and sends Gantu after Hamsterviel in exchange for reinstatement of his captain rank.
I don't care. Lay some mustard on me, baby. I mean, ma'am.
Lilo goes to get Stitch out of the pond when suddenly, outside of Myrtle's window, Gantu appears in his ship and takes Hamsterviel and Myrtle. Finder reveals he can fly, and they send him after the ship with Stitch. Myrtle and Hamsterviel bicker on board. Stitch and 625 battle on top of the ship, and this is a rare case where 625 gets a good blow in. Stitch, of course, ends up on top, and the ship crash lands. The Grand Councilwoman appears on Earth to retrieve Hamsterviel, but rescues her offer to Gantu once she realizes a little girl is put at risk. Lilo notices Myrtle is sad, and the Grand Councilwoman allows her to keep Hamsterviel confined as her pet. Finder gets a job at the Lost and Found, or should we say Found and Found now. Episode 28, Dupe, picks up in the action with Lilo and Stitch taking an experiment from Gantu. At home, Jumba explains experiment 344 can duplicate objects and people, but the duplicates are always a little off. For example, low-calorie cake spawns from the full sugar version. Pleakley comes in and lays down the ground rules for Lilo's slumber party tonight. He says 344 needs to be put away when Lilo's friends are over, so Jumba takes him to his ship. On her way back from groceries, Lilo runs into her friends. She reminds them about the slumber party, but once Lilo leaves, one of Myrtle's friends say they have no plan of attending. They just didn't forget. Wow, she is mean. Lilo preps for the party and opens the door to a whole lot of aliens. Over on Gantu's ship, he tries a different strategy for once. Therapy. He opens up to 625, but decides from the sessions not to trust anyone and heads out more angry than ever. Wandering alone at night, he stumbles upon experiment pods for sale in an antique store and decides to hatch them to create his own army. Over at Lilo's, the experiments have a giant pillow fight. Lilo is sad none of her friends showed, so she decides to take matters into her own hands and make friends. She goes to 344 to duplicate herself, but Stitch pushes her out of the way at the last second, and there's a whole lot of Stitches. The party wraps up, and Pleakley sends everyone home, while Stitch's clones begin making a mess immediately. Jumba wants to send them back, but Lilo insists she can get them to behave. They're whipped into shape, but Stitch is exhausted from the duplication process.
Strength of 626 has been divided into 4.
Jumba says he can be revived if Stitch absorbs them again, but Lilo wants to keep them around for her party. Later, Lilo plays sleepover games with her new friends when Gantu and the hatchling experiments whom he's been training bust in. The Stitches, having reduced power because they're dupes, are quickly taken down. Gantu brings them all, including the original Stitch, back to his ship. Lilo decides to reunite the duplicates with Stitch. They need a distraction to sneak onto Gantu's ship, so Lilo duplicates Pleakley next. They send him into Gantu's ship, and Lilo baits Gantu into duplicating his army, creating much weaker versions. Even Pleakley can beat them. Lilo reunites the Stitches and completely tosses Gantu aside. At home, Lilo apologizes, and they get Dupe a job at the ice cream stand. You've seen Stitch pilot jets and save the world, but have you seen him in love? Episode 30, Angel, features a recurring experiment who ends up as a love interest for Stitch, and believe me, trouble attracts trouble. Like other installments, this one starts with Gantu rampaging through town, and Lilo bumps directly into his target, a pink experiment. Stitch is immediately attracted. He can't bear to capture her like the others. Lilo goes to Jumba to find out more info. It turns out that she's experiment 624. But before he can get into the details, she distracts him with a weird song. He backtracks and says she's totally harmless. Once Lilo leaves, Jumba says he will get the experiments who turn good, so 624 can make them evil again. At home, Lilo lays down the law and makes Angel sleep by the dryer. That night, Angel sneaks out and goes to Gantu. That's right, he hatched her to spy on Lilo and the gang. The next morning, Stitch is still smitten, but he's not hypnotized by her song. She tugs on his heartstrings and storms off crying. She leads him directly to Slushy, an experiment from a previous episode working a shaved ice stand. She hypnotizes him, and he creates chaos. Angel does the same to a couple of other experiments too. Back at home, Lilo is thoroughly depressed. She reviews some footage Pleakley took of Stitch and Angel and zooms in on Angel's tag. She dials the number on it and reaches Hamsterviel. Lilo goes to find Jumba and discovers he's evil from Angel. Stitch follows Angel deep into a cave to where the other experiments are imprisoned. Hamsterviel, who somehow isn't Myrtle's pet anymore. Does this series even care about continuity? Anyways, Hamsterviel tells the experiments they will help him build an empire. Lilo steals Jumba's computer and discovers that if she sings the evil hypnosis song backwards, it will reverse the effects.
Ah, little girl. Hello.
Lilo, Jumba, and Pleakley arrive just as Gantu's ship takes off. Gantu sicks all of Stitch's cousins on him when Stitch gains an unlikely ally, Angel. She turns the experiments on Gantu. Stitch hacks the ship and returns it home. The landing isn't exactly graceful. Stitch comes off the ship with his new girl Angel, but it's too late. Gantu swoops her up. Next, episode 32, Poxy has an experiment pod come out of a cereal box right in Lilo's living room. What are the odds? Pleakley swallows it. Oh no. Meanwhile, in town, Lilo and Stitch accidentally cause destruction. Nothing new here. Nani is not having it. Later, Lilo returns to Pleakley to find him sick, covered in purple pimples. They try to fix Pleakley, but Stitch isn't medically licensed. Lilo goes to Jumba for advice. He says 222 is similar to a parasite, designed to get people sick. Luckily, he's not contagious. Gantu stakes out a health clinic for Pleakley and tries to catch him. After a wild showdown, they bring Pleakley home. Jumba plans on shrinking Lilo and Stitch to microscopic size to find 222 inside Pleakley. They drive through his blood vessels and quickly encounter 222. He leads them on a chase, but Lilo manages to outsmart Pleakley's antibodies, which also attack Lilo. Where's Osmosis Jones when you need him? On the outside, Gantu takes Pleakley. Jumba tries to warn them that they only have 1 hour or Pleakley will explode, but the transmission cuts out. Back inside Pleakley, Lilo and Stitch ride around his digestive tract after 222, and the animation is seriously stylish. The fight affects Pleakley on the outside too. He feels the effects of their battle. Through Pleakley's eyes, Lilo sees Gantu capture him. She heads to the brain and loops Stitch into the controls. He easily escapes Gantu, and Jumba shrinks him down. Back in Pleakley's digestive system, Lilo nabs 222 in Pleakley's ear, but they start to expand as Jumba's ray begins to wear off. He belches them out. 222 later finds perfect use, getting Gantu sick. If only the cure were sandwiches. The season finale Drowsy opens with Lilo sprinting home. She gives Jumba a box of experiment pods, but wait, she's running late for hula practice. Jumba gives Pleakley a promotion, which is just more work. Nani drives Lilo to hula practice, but says if Lilo doesn't start focusing more on her human responsibilities, she will be banned from experiment hunting. Later at home, Lilo stays up all night reviewing the experiments left. Stitch tries to get her to sleep, but it doesn't work, so he activates experiment 360, who has the power to put people to sleep. Gantu tries to get some rest too, but gets woken up by Hamsterviel. He plans to mind control the most influential human on the planet, but needs experiment 360 to make it happen. The next morning, the sleep effect works a little too well, and Lilo oversleeps her morning. Stitch puts some sunglasses on her and bowls a weekend at Bernie's. We'll see how long this fools anyone. Meanwhile, 360 escapes and starts knocking the entire town out. Jumba and Pleakley go after him, but he gets away. He does helpfully knock out Gantu. It's Lilo's hula show, and she is still out cold, so Stitch ties ropes to her arms and puppets her dance. It's pretty fantastic. The crowd loves it. Lilo gets invited to perform at the airport for an important guest coming to town. Hope she wakes up by then. Jumba explains that Lilo can be woken up by splashing water on her, and she's up instantly. They head to the airport and the special guest arrives, none other than
Regis Philbin? Cool!
Talk about star power. They pull up to the hotel, but Gantu waits as a bellhop. Stitch keeps on driving and sneaks him inside later. They help Regis dodge Gantu's multiple attempts to abduct him. Lilo says he should come to her house, according to Hawaiian tradition after all. That night, the gang sleeps soundly. Little do they know, an entire extra season of experiment catching madness awaits. The season 2 premiere, Spike, picks up with 319, an experiment that makes people really dumb. He sabotages an expert's speech and infects the audience next. Meanwhile, Lilo plans to compete in the Ohana Rama trivia contest against Myrtle for a new computer. Jumba experiments with a device to turn experiments from bad to good, but he's got to work out some kinks. Lilo takes them to the museum to brush up on facts ahead of the contest. At the museum, the aliens get acquainted with Earth. Suddenly, 319 appears and starts throwing quills. Stitch apprehends him quickly, but gets hit by a quill and is completely dumb ahead of the contest. Jumba says he will return to full mental capacity in 48 hours. Lilo sets out to reteach Stitch everything to make him smart in time. Lilo helps Stitch cram, but he's a slow learner. Not even listening to Elvis helps. Meanwhile, Pleakley holds a support group for other experiments, but it quickly devolves into chaos. He eventually hugs 319, and 319 breaks down. The other experiments cry too. At the Ohana Rama, Lilo, Jumba, and Pleakley face off against Myrtle and her team, but their knowledge is a little too beyond the judge's knowledge. so Myrtle and her team sweep. She puts 319, now named Spike, to sting Myrtle. Pleakley advises against it, but when Lilo catches someone feeding Myrtle the answers, she has Spike sting her.
Bucket of monkeys.
The competition continues, and something tells me that's not part of the scientific method. Lilo's team closes the gap, and it all comes down to rapid-fire questions. Lilo ends up taking it home. Nice. Episode 3, Swapper, begins with Lilo working at a lemonade stand. Myrtle and her crew call Lilo weird and move on, but a new girl named Victoria walks up, and they hit it off immediately. At Gantu's lab, he attempts to send experiment 355 to Hamsterviel, but 355 escapes and shines a ray on both, and they swap bodies. What is this, Freaky Friday? Hamsterviel plans on staying in Gantu's body to get out of prison, and leaves Gantu stranded in his. The next day at Hula, Myrtle tells Victoria that Lilo is a freak. At dinner, Lilo is depressed as heck. Pleakley said they should have a welcome party to welcome Victoria to town. Lilo heads off to get supplies. Stitch sniffs out 355 on top of a light pole. They capture 355 when Stitch is in Lilo's body just as Lilo sets out to prove she's not weird. This is gonna be a disaster. Lilo, as Stitch, heads back to talk to Jumbo while Stitch, as Lilo, gets ready for the party. They both get used to their new bodies, with Lilo finally getting used to Stitch's super skills. Lilo meets up with Stitch later and finds her hair completely ridiculous. Jumbo says he can't force 355 to swap them back. Just then, Pleakley lifts 355's cover and he gets swapped with Jumbo. Oh no. The party guests arrive, and Stitch does pretty well. Meanwhile, Hamsterviel is having a hard time adjusting to Gantu's body. Back at Lilo's, Stitch starts getting weird. He does a hula dance, and Myrtle immediately wants to leave. Victoria is having fun though, and decides to stay. Hamsterviel as Gantu lifts off of the roof. Swapper switches everyone yet again, and Stitch saves the day as Pleakley. When life gives you lemons, you throw them at bad guys. Lilo as 355 swap Hamsterviel back to Gantu, and everything is back to normal with one nice difference. Lilo has a friend. Episode 13, Morpholomew, is the first of 4 crossover episodes this season from different Disney Channel shows, with this one featuring characters from American Dragon Jake Long. Lilo and Stitch encounter Keone, looking at a display of a Velociraptor 1200 skateboard. Lilo has a bit of a crush on Keone. Okay, a major crush. The Velociraptor is the grand prize for a skate contest, but he can't enter because he's going out of town. Lilo decides to learn skating to win the board and give it to Keone, and in the process accidentally hydrates experiment 316. Stitch is on it. Well, that was easy. At the house, Jumba explains that 316 can shapeshift people into other forms. At the skate competition, Lilo isn't old enough to enter, so she has 316 turn her into Keone. She's not the only competitor. That's right, Jake Long is entering for the board too. And he's here along with Laoshi, Foo Dog, Trixie, and Spud. Laoshi reminds Jake that they're investigating magical creatures, which they mistake the experiments for when he finds a distraction of his own. Mrs. Hasagawa.
Excuse me, I must go and meet the woman of my dreams.
Lilo registers for the competition as Keone and fails completely. Even worse, she meets Keone's girlfriend as Keone and breaks up with her. Wow, Lilo is ruthless. Just then, Jake notices Lilo, Stitch, and 316. He turns into a dragon to go after them, and he gets promptly snatched by Gantu. Maybe that works in his show, but not here. Gantu carries Jake away. Meanwhile, Lilo wants another shot, so she asks 316 to turn her into Jake. On Gantu's ship, he's about to send Jake to Hamsterviel, when he reminds Gantu that he's magical and easily escapes. Smell you later, Gantu. Meanwhile, Lilo, as Jake, tries her hand at the competition again, and it goes just as well as the first time. Even worse, 316 ran away, leaving Lilo stranded in Jake's body. Suddenly, Jake as a dragon emerges, and Lilo, for someone who deals with the supernatural every day, freaks out. If you've ever wondered what a fight between an alien and a dragon would look like, I've got news for you. But it gets broken up by Lilo before we see a winner. Lilo comes clean to Jake and his friends, and they head off to Gantu, who captured experiment 316. Stitch rides Jake as the dragon to Gantu's ship, and they fight while Lilo frees 316. He changes her back into her true form, but Gantu steals her back. The gang breaks into the ship, and 316 turns Gantu into Hamsterviel. They leave him in this form. Tough. Jake ends up naming 316 Morpholomew, and Lilo's new friends head off. Lilo is about to have 316 turn her into Keone one more time so she can get back together with his girlfriend. But in that moment, Keone comes back and breaks up with her anyway. That worked out well. The episode wraps up, but this is just the start of crazy crossovers. Episode 14, Spats, features the Proud family. But first, Jumba and Pleakley are opening a bed and not breakfast in their spaceship. Their first guest, Mr. Cooper, a journalist for relaxing times, gets right to reviewing. Next, the other guests arrive. Let's hope Pleakley can handle a crowd. Lilo hits it off with Penny Proud right away. She's writing an article for her school paper. The family settles in, and the unconventional hospitality of Pleakley could take some getting used to.
What's his phone?
Oh boy.
Sugar Mama goes to take a bath and accidentally rehydrates experiment 397, which causes the Proud Family dog Puff to fight with a squirrel on the windowsill. Lilo helps Penny with her article. They head for the beach. Meanwhile, 397 zaps each member of the Proud Family, causing them to argue. Mr. Koopa and Juma get it too. Next, Pleakley and Juma take their guests on a tour around town. Lilo, Penny, and Stitch notice the experiment following them. Later, Lilo and Stitch bring Penny home to give her the lowdown on the escaped experiment situation, and they head out to get 397. Next, 397 zaps Penny and Lilo, and they devolve into an argument. Stitch tries to get them back on track, but it's no use. Both Pleakley and Juma's tour and Lilo, Stitch, and Penny end up at a wrestling match, where 397 makes everyone in the audience fight. Penny discovers the antidote for being mad, counting slowly to 10. She runs off to tell Lilo when 397 lands right in her hands. Gonzu comes by, but she gets an unlikely ally. That granny can kick some serious butt. After Gonzu's knockout, Lilo has everyone count to 10, and they recover from 397's spell. In the end, Lilo gives 397 to Wizard Kelly, another Proud Family character. He's surprisingly chill being handed an alien. Penny makes her article about Hawaii's main attraction, aliens. Rufus is another crossover, this time from Kim Possible. Lilo and Stitch play hide and seek in the jungle when a ship comes and swoops Stitch away. At their house, when Lilo finds out Jumba's ship is under repair, she sets out to get Stitch back herself. Jumba says she can't do missions without Stitch, so Pleakley suggests they contact the one, the only, Kim Possible, whom he sees in a magazine. Lilo isn't impressed. Can Kim even hula? The ship that took Stitch is piloted by none other than Dr. Draken, a villain from the Kim Possible universe. This time, he's working with Hamsterviel. Kim, Ron, and Rufus take their plane to Hawaii. Kim rolls into Lilo's living room and she gets to know Lilo, leading to a hilarious mix-up. Lilo and Jumba brief Kim on the mission, but Lilo's pride gets in the way and she tries to dismiss Kim. Jumba notices Rufus in Ron's pocket and says he's Experiment 627. What? He tries to grab Rufus, but the naked mole rat escapes. Ron runs after them. Lilo and Kim head out and find Dr. D's glove in the jungle, and Kim sets out to get him back herself, so as not to endanger Lilo. Draken holds Stitch behind electrically charged bars, but he's not the only Kim Possible villain in the mix. That's right, Shago is on the assignment too. Draken explains he plans to clone Stitch to wreak destruction over multiple cities. While they bicker, Stitch stages an escape, but Shago puts a stop to it. Kim dives in, but Lilo hides out in the parachute. She gets the helicopter to bring Lilo back. Lilo arrives as Jumba and Ron fight over Rufus, but bad news. Kim was captured on her drive to the underwater lair. She calls Ron. Lilo overhears and sets out to save them both. Jumba drives the gang underwater in the hovercraft, and Lilo drives the rest of the way. Lilo uses some smooth moves to free Kim and Stitch. The heroes and villains get into an epic battle. Rufus causes the cloning machine to short circuit, and the entire lair begins to collapse. Stitch opens the door, and Kim and Lilo carry him up to Jumba's hovercraft. On the beach, the gang gets together. Stitch smells Rufus and determines he's not 627.
Naga cousin, mole rat!
Are you sure?
They give Rufus back to Ron and all attend a luau that night. Sweet ending to an action-packed episode. If you want to watch more Kim Possible, be sure to check out our other video recapping the entire show. Episode 21, Lax, ties in characters from Recess, which had already ended its run. Lilo is making a mess again, which Nani tells her to clean. Unseen to all, Experiment 285 gets hydrated outside. Lilo puts Pleakley up to cleaning the kitchen, but he passes out. Lilo asks Stitch for help moving Pleakley to the couch, but he refuses and chooses to sleep instead. Jumba thinks this is a result of 285, an experiment that makes people lazy. 285 gets Pleakley and Jumba next, leaving Lilo to deal alone. She drags Stitch along after the experiment. Lilo and Stitch walk through a hotel after 285 when we encounter some familiar faces. That's right, the Recess kids are on a class trip.
Hey, you're a local kid. What do you do for fun on this rock?
Lilo meets them by the pool when Mikey gets zapped by 285. Lilo and her new friends take cover. Gretchen has a plan to catch 285, but Lilo insists she has it under control. Vincent gets zapped next. Lilo teams up with TJ, Spinelli, Gretchen, and Gus. Gretchen deduces that 285 is an alien, and Lilo confirms. She grabs a serving platter to deflect 285's rays. They chase out of the hotel and onto a golf course. They seem to be gaining when 285, now called Lax, runs away on the water. It crawls onto the observatory, and Gretchen suggests rotating the building to throw Lax off balance. Instead, Gretchen looks down the telescope and sees Hamsterviel's satellite that locates the experiments. Lilo wants to take it down. They walk outside to bad news. TJ and Spinelli got zapped too and are starting to embrace the do-nothing life. Gus is freaking out. Back in the observatory, Lilo wants to project Lax's gaze to the satellite, so it goes on vacation and stops broadcasting. Lilo rallies the gang by having them play Lax golf. They hit golf balls at Lax until he falls asleep. Gretchen is about to give Lilo the vectors to disable the satellite when Lax zaps her next. But she's not affected because work is vacation for her. Imagine how much you'd get done if you had that problem. They fire, and the satellite shorts out just as Gantu is about to reach them. It also causes a really cool fireworks show. Lilo sees the recess gang off at the airport, and Lax ends up helping stressed travelers relax right when they're off the plane. Episode 22, Remy, opens with a turtle unwittingly hatching the 276's pod. At Lilo's house, she is sad because it's the anniversary of her parents' death. Outside, Jumba sees 276. He announces that his experiment can turn dreams into nightmares. They see 276 go into Lilo's ear as she sleeps. So Jumba gets Pleakley and Stitch to enter Lilo's dreams to stop her from having nightmares. Guess you could call this Stitchception. In Lilo's dream, she lives in Stitch's ship and is best friends with zombies, but when they disappear, 276 turns it into a bad dream. Jumba attempts to suck 276 into his vacuum but is unsuccessful. He starts making all parts of the dream disappear. The only way out is through a door that Lilo never goes through. Back in the real world, Nani encounters Mrs. Hasagawa singing a song that her mom used to sing. She runs back to wake up Lilo so she doesn't oversleep. In Lilo's dream, she's now at hula class. Strangely, it's not going too badly. Myrtle is being nice, but the entire dream starts getting weird. It turns out to be a distraction from 276, who turns the pleasant dream into a night terror. At that moment, Nani tries waking Lilo, so Pleakley flies out to stop her so they don't end up trapped in the dream. But it's too late. Pleakley fills Nani in. She decides to sing Lilo's mother's song, and it allows her to escape from the mental prison. Still, it's chaos on the outside. Nani can tell Lilo is restless and sends Pleakley back with a picture of Lilo's parents. He appears just in time, and the picture sends Lilo to such a good place that 276 is rendered powerless. Jumba reprograms 276 to be harmless, and he finds work at the arcade, making games as realistic as possible.
Oh no, you don't!
Loser!
Nani, help!
Episode 24, Glitch, is actually a pretty creepy episode. We find Lilo writing thank you notes, but she really wants to play video games instead. Lilo goes to Jumba to ask him to invent a machine to do the thank you notes for her. Lazy much? He does it, and the machine works great. But that's not all. Jumba automates every chore in the house. All the machines are run by one central computer that Jumba claims is totally disaster-proof. By a wild series of events, Experiment 223's pod lands in the auto stamper and rehydrates. 223 enters an electrical outlet and buzzes throughout the whole house. This isn't gonna be good. All the lights go out. Jumba thinks it's a glitch in the reactor, but when he sees the glow in the reactor room, he knows it's 223. When Jumba doesn't come back, Nani goes to look for him and gets shut in the attic. Next, Pleakley gets sucked into the couch. The whole house short circuits, but Lilo gets an idea. She traps 224 in her own game. The series finale, Link, opens with Lilo and Stitch flying a kite when they collide headfirst into Myrtle. They encounter a pirate who gives Lilo and Myrtle a treasure map. They fight over it initially, but decide to search for the treasure together. They follow the trail to a spot on the beach and start to dig, accidentally unearthing Experiment 251. Meanwhile, 625 cycles through the computer for an experiment to aid him in the perfect sandwich. Why doesn't he check his local deli? Anyway, they get the notification that 251 is activated, and its function is binding together incompatible individuals. Stitch, Myrtle, and Lilo continue on their dig when Gantu overhears them. Lilo and Myrtle start bickering again when 251 sees them and shows what his power is all about. Oh brother, he may as well try combining oil and water. Meanwhile, back at Lilo's house, Jumba is making a huge mess per usual. 251 stops by and binds Jumba and Pleakley next. That's not all, he also sees Nani and Stitch fighting and binds them next. Each set gets used to their new appendages, with Stitch and Nani having to pilot a boat. It goes haywire, and they get dragged through mud on the beach. When they come to a stop, the binding is gone. 251 starts joining people all over town. Lilo tries to stop him, but it's Myrtle who has the idea to make their arm into a lasso and wrangle 251. Lilo names him Link and goes to find him a new home, but Myrtle says that wasn't part of the deal. Before they can discuss, Gantu comes by. They take off, but they sure do need to learn to work together more. 251 escapes and binds Myrtle and Stitch to Gantu in the process. Nani reveals to Pleakley and Jumba that mud gets rid of the binding, and they free themselves. On Gantu's ship, Stitch shows up just in time to save them. Even Myrtle gets a good shot in. Back on the beach, Myrtle and Lilo are bummed they didn't get the treasure, when the pirate from the beginning returns to reveal the chest and its contents. A free trip to the dentist shop. I guess cooperation was the greatest treasure of all.
Because there's no greater treasure than a healthy smile.
Gold doubloons would have been sick though. Before the experiment hunting story introduced in the series wraps up, the direct-to-DVD sequel, Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch, directly follows the original movie. We open on Stitch causing more chaos than ever before. He shoots at Lilo's house and seems possessed by an evil alien energy. Then, Lilo, who is voiced this time by Dakota Fanning, wakes him up. She plays Shrink and analyzes Stitch's dream to determine that he thinks he could go bad again. She runs a test, and Stitch passes with flying colors, but something isn't right. Meanwhile, Jumba and Pleakley are still finding out where they fit in on Earth. Stitch takes Lilo in his hovercraft, and a reprise of a Hawaiian roller coaster ride plays. It's reminiscent of the original and makes Hawaii look like a true paradise. At hula school, Lilo is too intense yet again. Kumu announces an upcoming hula competition at the May Day celebration. Her classmates brainstorm theme ideas, but Lilo feels left out, having no parents to help her at home. Kumu notices and takes Lilo aside. He shows Lilo that her mom won the competition years ago. Lilo is inspired. But outside, Myrtle tears her down, so Lilo attacks her. Kumu meets with Nani and sees the chaos in Lilo's house since the aliens moved in. Even worse, when Pleakley and Jumba hear Lilo is in trouble at school, they try to overcompensate and come out in their human disguises. David arrives next. He wants to take Nani out, but she's too busy to even consider. Kumu has a one-on-one with Lilo where he says he's seriously concerned about her behavior, and if she creates more trouble, she'll be disqualified. Yeah, this is gonna be hard. Lilo is seriously depressed and says she'll never be like her mom, so Stitch puts a flower in her hair and the resemblance is undeniable. They decide to team up and win the competition together. Lilo and Stitch cycle through different fun themes for the dance. That night, Nani tries to get them to take a break for dinner, but they refuse to participate. She freaks out and says they'll have fun whether they like it or not. She makes sci-fi appetizers, but they're kind of gross.
What kind of sick joke is this?
Don't be making her mad. Eat it!
Ultimately, she's trying way too hard. They watch a classic creature feature, when Stitch's eyes light up again, and he loses it completely. That is not normal. Jumba heads back to his ship to look into things. He analyzes a sample of Stitch's fur and determines the problem. During Stitch's creation, the police interrupted the process of allowing his molecules to charge. Now, in the present, Jumba says Stitch's circuits could burn themselves out, and he will shut down completely. That night, Lilo finds Stitch cowering under the bed, upset by his lack of control. She comforts him with the original story of Elvis when they realize that's the perfect theme for their hula dance. Lilo decides to take Stitch on a mission to places Elvis went to in Kauai to get ideas. They check off each other's location in a fun montage set to some Elvis, but Stitch's goodness slowly drains as the numbers go on. They end on a bench that Elvis sat on in the film Blue Hawaii. Lilo yells out to receive an idea, but none come. Suddenly, it starts to rain and the map of Elvis spots blows away and gets completely ruined. They take shelter from the rain under a gas station and encounter some players. Lilo and Stitch get the inspiration they need. Jumbo formulates a plan to recharge Stitch, but he doesn't have the alien tech on hand to make it happen, so he'll have to make do with Earth machinery. They start with Nani's toaster, but just then, David, who is trying to take Nani on a date, comes by when she's on the way out. She invites him in for some toast. Pleakley gets him away by offering advice on Nani. They go watch her at work, totally not creepy, and Pleakley, as a woman, pretends to be into David so Nani will get jealous. It doesn't have the intended effect. Meanwhile, Lilo and Stitch start getting serious about dance. Lilo and Stitch go to their final rehearsal before the actual show, but before Stitch goes on stage, he starts to glitch. He ruins rehearsal and terrifies everyone. Later, Nani tells Lilo to be patient, but she doesn't understand. She thinks Stitch is doing this on purpose. Even worse, Stitch hears. He goes around town and tries to be good, and actually does pretty well, but it's no use. When he's back around Lilo, they start bickering immediately, and it devolves into full-fledged fighting until Nani sends them to their room. Stitch, the bigger person, or should I say alien, apologizes first. Lilo says if he promises to be good, she'll give him one more chance. But he glitches when she leaves the room and destroys the costume for their dance. Lilo storms out. Back with Pleakley and Jumba, Jumba unveils a fusion chamber that will cure Stitch. But it explodes. Jumba hilariously reveals he didn't build it but ordered from a catalog. Anyways, Pleakley motivates Jumba to use his evil genius to build a new one. Lilo lashes out at Nani until she collapses. They have a tender moment when they reminisce about their mother. Lilo tells Nani she has to win the contest for Mom to be proud of her. Nani tells her that's not the case and Mom would be proud of her regardless. Stitch sulks when Lilo goes into hardcore training mode. It's the night of the performance and Lilo arrives more determined than ever. Stitch shows up as an audience member. The dances begin. Myrtle tries to bribe the judge and basically turns her dance into an ad for her dad's store. She is such a brat. Meanwhile, Jumba and Pleakley have a new fusion chamber, but go on red alert when they receive a notification that Stitch is hitting critical levels. Stitch goes to wish Lilo well before she goes on stage, but has a freak out and accidentally scratches her face. Lilo's dance is nice, but her heart isn't in it. She gives up in the middle and lays her costume down. She leaves the stage and tells Nani, Pleakley, and Jumba that something is seriously wrong with Stitch. Jumba fills them in, and they set out to find him. They search all over the house, but there's no sign until...
The ship!
The fusion chamber!
He flies away on the ship to stop doing harm to others. So the gang gets in Nani's car and chase after the ship. Just as Stitch is about to engage hyperdrive, he glitches and crashes into the jungle. Nani reveals she hid the hovercraft from earlier in her trunk and lets Lilo drive it to the crash site. She finds him battered and depressed. Lilo drags him to Jumba's machine, but it doesn't work. This is sadder than when E.T. almost died. Lilo feels horrible for getting mad at him earlier and breaks down. But then, the computer lights up, and Stitch is back. Hope he's ready to hunt more experiments. Speaking of that, we still need to wrap that story up. Leroy and Stitch, originally airing on Disney Channel, serves as the series finale and last entry in the animated continuity. We start at the United Galactic Federation headquarters, where Lilo, Stitch, Jumba, and Pleakley are awarded for capturing all of the escaped experiments. Grand Councilwoman awards them each. Jumba gets the key back to his lab, Pleakley is made a professor of Earth Studies, Stitch is commander of the Galactic Armada's newest flagship, the Big Red Battleship, or BRB for short, and Lilo becomes the Federation's first Earth ambassador and caretaker for the experiments on Hawaii. But the celebrations are cut short when Lilo realizes her alien besties will be leaving her. Not wanting to hurt her feelings, the aliens agree to go back to Hawaii instead of rejoining their kind in space. The gang returns to Earth, and they pass tons of experiments from previous episodes who have taken up residence on the island. Lilo sets out to finish a logbook of the experiments, and Pleakley tries to flex on everyone with his Earth knowledge. Meanwhile, Gantu is doing worse than ever. He realizes his mission was a complete failure, so he decides to load up his shuttle and break Hamsterviel out of prison. Okay, back to Lilo's house. When Jumba is working on a new invention, Lilo asks Jumba about his old lab, and he gets excited. She has similar interactions with Pleakley and Stitch and realizes she kept them from living their intergalactic dreams. Nani finds Lilo alone and comforts her and says letting her friends go to space demonstrates the aloha spirit. It's not only hello, but goodbye too. Lilo sees her friends off with gifts, and it's really emotional. Anyone got a tissue? She gives Stitch a necklace of the Hawaiian god of strength, Kutiki. Lilo says aloha one last time as the ship takes off. Meanwhile, Gantu fights his way through the prison to Hamsterviel.
Your escape will soon be complete.
What do you mean, complete?
They fly back to Earth as Stitch arrives at a meeting with the Grand Councilwoman. She briefs him on Hamsterviel's escape and makes that his first mission on the Big Red Battleship. Stitch makes himself right at home. He's no Captain Kirk, but he'll make it work. Stitch takes off. At United Galactic Federation Community College, Pleakley makes himself right at home, and Jumba, who's still rocking a Hawaiian shirt, flourishes at his lab. In Hawaii, Lilo checks in on Stitch's cousin, and we see quite a few familiar faces. All goes well until she encounters Myrtle, who is mean as can be to Lilo, ruining her mood. Lilo returns home, totally depressed and dejected. At Jumba's lab, he forgets Pleakley is gone and calls out for him. When no one replies, he starts to feel lonely and fires up some Elvis. There's a montage where we see each member of the main gang successful yet completely alone. Jumba goes to flip the record when Hamsterviel busts in. He offers to work together with Jumba as partners again, but Jumba is not into it, so Hamsterviel gets Gantu to force Jumba to create a new, evil version of Stitch. Just then, Pleakley calls asking to visit, and Jumba has to pretend not to want him to keep him away from the lab. He finishes the experiment. Hamsterviel decides to name 626 Leroy. Gantu and Jumba thinks it's hilarious. In that moment, Stitch comes in, guns blazing. Hamsterviel releases Leroy, and the two get in an epic fight that ruins Jumba's lab. Stitch seems to have the upper hand, but Leroy keeps coming back. In the end, Stitch gets captured. Hamsterviel has Pleakley, Jumba, and Stitch all apprehended. He uses Jumba's tech to create an army of Leroy clones. This is not gonna be good. Even worse, Hamsterviel sends the ship containing Stitch, Pleakley, and Jumba into a black hole. Hamsterviel, Gantu, and Leroy hijack the BRB. On Earth, Lilo tries to call Agent Cobra Bubbles to reach Stitch, but gets his voicemail. She tries to get a space cell phone from Gantu's ship and encounters 625 on a sandwich-making bender. She gives him a PB&J, but he still refuses to help her. Lilo realizes she never gave him a name and decides to call him Ruben after the classic sandwich. He agrees to help and finally gets accepted as a cousin. On the BRB, Leroy receives a call from Lilo. He disguises himself as Stitch, but she sees through it when he's not wearing the tiki necklace. Leroy panics and shoots the transmitter. Gantu tries to warn Hamsterviel about the force of experiments loyal to Lilo. He plans to capture the experiments and destroy them in a public arena. He puts Leroy on the job. On Earth, Lilo knows the entire galaxy is at risk. She motivates Ruben to stop making sandwiches and embraces Stitch powers. He is surprisingly super competent. Maybe he just needed someone to be nice to him this whole time. Ruben fixes Gantu's ship and they head out to space, right as Leroy arrives. Meanwhile, on the shuttle carrying Stitch, Pleakley, and Jumba, Stitch breaks out to gain control of the ship, but it doesn't work. Pleakley uses the gift Lilo gave him earlier, a rock, to alter the ship's destination. They get sucked into the black hole. On Earth, Leroy finds Lilo's log of the other experiments. He makes quick work of them. Meanwhile, Lilo and Ruben fly to the United Galactic Federation to find that Hamsterviel has taken over the galaxy by sending Leroy far and wide. He even demoted the Grand Councilwoman to a secretary.
Dr. Hamsterviel's office. I'm sorry, he's in a meeting.
Leroy calls from Earth to update Hamsterviel that all experiments have been caught on Earth. Hamsterviel sends Lilo and Ruben to prison and dismisses Gantu from service, but Leroy is much more efficient. Gantu is super mad about how Hamsterviel treated him, but still drops Lilo and Leroy off in jail. Just as all hope seems lost, Gantu returns and breaks them out of their new cell. The Leroy clones chase them and eventually surround the crew, but in that exact moment, the shuttle carrying Stitch, Pleakley, and Jumba warps onto the ship. Lilo, Ruben, and Gantu jump on board and fly back to Earth to save the experiments. In Hawaii, Leroy has all the experiments rounded up at the stadium. Myrtle is caught with them too, but I don't feel that bad for her. Hamsterviel is about to exterminate the experiments when the cavalry comes in. Lilo, Stitch, and the gang confront Hamsterviel. Team Ohana and all the cousins face off against the Leroy clones. Stitch gives them a motivating speech, and the battle begins. It's seriously epic, and Stitch and his cousins start with the upper hand. But Stitch is thrown from the battle. Lilo asks Jumba for help, and he says there's a secret shutoff word for Leroy, Aloha Oi. So Stitch takes the stage. Lilo and Ruben join him and seriously rock out. One by one, the clones of 627 get taken out. At the United Galactic Federation, the Grand Councilwoman again honors the great heroes in the galaxy. Stitch resigns from his job as captain, choosing his place with Lilo on Earth. Gantu gets reinstated as captain and takes on Ruben as his officer. And Jumba and Pleakley decide to return to Earth as well. It's a heartwarming, beautiful ending. Wait, what about Hamsterviel? Riding away in a jail cell where he belongs. That wraps up the animated story of Lilo and Stitch. But like all true Disney legends, Stitch got a big budget live-action remake. Let's get into it.
Whoa.
The live-action remake generally follows the same story of the original, with some key differences. First off, Gantu isn't present at all, with Jumba staying as the villain. When Jumba and Pleakley go undercover, they are portrayed by actual humans instead of disguises. And even though the film directors fought for it, Pleakley never appears in a dress. Bubbles is still in the film, but the actual Lilo custody conflict is handled by a new character, Mrs. Kekoa, who is portrayed by Tia Carrere, the original voice actor for Nani. Lilo is not only watched by Nani, but David and his grandma, Tutu, played just as big a role. The last act deviates quite a bit. After Nani and Lilo's last night together, Stitch is captured by Jumba. Lilo sneaks onto his ship, they throw Jumba out, and the ship crashes. Stitch manages to save Lilo as he sinks into the ocean, but is rescued by Nani. Jumba gets rearrested, and Kekoa allows Nani to give Lilo's guardianship to David and Tutu. Nani goes home to study marine biology in San Diego, but still returns home with the help of her awesome alien portal gun. Beats waiting around an airport any day. So what do we think? Did the live-action version do the original movies and series justice? Or could it have used Gantu? Or Hamsterviel? Let me know in the comments. Catch you on the next one.